Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa Campion, and this is the Miracle of Healing on Empower Radio. And we're here to discuss all kinds of healing, which is something the world needs a lot these days, now more than ever. If you're new to my show, then I'm so glad to welcome you. And if you've been listening for a while, welcome back. Is it really possible to heal from trauma? That's what we're going to talk about today. Can we go from trauma to freedom? And we have two people here today who are going to speak on this. Kristina Lee and Heather Ensworth have combined their personal and professional experiences over 50 years, if you put them all together, to share their really pioneering and super deep understanding of the process of healing from trauma. And they have this this beautiful book right here called From Trauma to Freedom that we're going to talk about. And they have this new protocol for it, or it was new to me anyway, on how we can integrate a new sense of self, which includes aspects of our spiritual life, our emotional, our mental, physical, and relational self, even if we've really been through the ringer, which many of us have. We all have levels of trauma. And it's super important. And I know in my own life as a healer, this is something that I come back to over and over again. How do we find effective ways to actually heal trauma, not just sort of gloss it over? So I'm super happy to have you, you ladies, with us today. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Great introduction.
Well,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, because it is something like I train healers, and I teach people, like I have like a year-long academy where I train people to be professional psychic healers. And we just finished, we've been working for the past 3 months on how do we work with people that really have issues. Because I always say, I've been working as a healer since I was 19, and nobody ever comes to my office because they're having a good day. Like that's not what we do if we're in the world as helpers. And we need to learn how to work with trauma, and we also need to learn how to heal through our own trauma. So I'm wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about your beautiful book and what brought you both to write it.
Why don't you start, Kristina?
Okay, yeah, Lisa, I we do similar work, and so part of that is my understanding as well, and my experience is that usually people find our doors because they've tried all the traditional ones, and that was certainly my path. Yeah, and my own healing of trauma is going through traditional methods, and although they had their place, they were still lacking. There were still things that I felt like couldn't really get to the root cause and really, have the shift or the healing impact that I needed. So, knowing that healing is a lifelong journey, I feel like, for most of us, but there are certainly ways that are more effective than not at helping really get to this stuff. And so I'm passionate about it, I think. And Heather and I were just talking. I feel like we could go hours on this. I know our time is short. But Heather and I were just talking about how important it is that healers heal themselves to an extent where they're integrated and in integrity with their work. And Heather, do you remember that quote off of you? Hate to throw you under the bus, but that quote was so good, that from Jung.
Yeah, it's a Carl Jung quote about how critical it is for the healer to be in their own journey of healing, because, and truthfully, you can only take someone as far as you've gone yourself.
Yeah.
And I know that in my experience as a clinical psychologist, I was continually in my own therapy, in my own journey of healing as I was supporting others. But like Kristina was saying, part of what I found in my own process of taking psychology, clinical psychology, as far as it could go, that we really need to integrate other ways of healing along the lines of what you do, Lisa, and Kristina does in terms of working at that energetic level, working at a more intuitive and psychic level, integrating spirituality. And to me, part of what we're trying to put out in this book is it's really critical in the healing journey to get at the root of the core wounds and really heal them at that level so that it can be integrated on all levels. It's not about, a treatment that sort of covers things over or changes behaviors. It's about actual deep healing so that you come back into your true self.
Yeah, my background is also in sort of a more clinical psych. I was trained in psychosynthesis, which is more like parts work, and I think that a lot of people come into this work having sort of hit the limit of what traditional
Mhm.
psychotherapy can do, and I do think that is an important part of the process. But it's sort of like, like you say in your book, we have to handle it from the physical, the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, and somatic work has been a big part
Mhm.
of what I bring, what I teach, and what I bring into my client work, and working from the level of the spiritual angle. And you have come up with a sort of this acronym, the ARCH, or do you say it ARC or ARCH?
Arch.
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 Um, yeah, that kind of handles all of those angles. Like, and I think we kind of work through one and exhaust it, and then sort of open up another one of these. But can you tell us a little bit about this protocol that you've developed?
Well, I'll start with it, and then Kristina, you can take it over. But part of what we've used as the template for that sense of healing on all levels is the understanding of the medicine wheel, which is
Hmm.
an ancient shamanic practice that's at the root of every cultural tradition. And it's really that sense of how do we work around the wheel, and in this healing medicine wheel, we incorporate these 4 different components of healing. But eventually, the goal is to come to the center of the medicine wheel where you're in alignment with your true self and coming back into that sense of integration and wholeness. But maybe, Kristina, you could talk about the 4 directions on the medicine wheel and the aspects of the arch model.
Yeah, I like the model doesn't it's not so much about getting through one and popping into another. It's really a spiral journey where
Hmm.
we go in and out, we weave in and out of these and into wholeness. Sometimes we stay there, but that's not the end goal, because certainly I feel if we're in wholeness all the time, or in that place of just solidity, peace, groundedness, alignment with our true soul self, we're probably pretty close to ready, we're close to transcending, I would say. Being on the earth plane, I feel like we will always have levels of pain and suffering and hardship. And so it's a journey. But I do feel like we need all the tools. Just one aspect or one tool doesn't do it all. And sometimes one is needed more than the other one.
Hmm.
So we start really with A, or alignment, and that is just coming into the most we can of soul self, of being aligned to that consciousness that is pure peace, joy, is always running through all of us. And we do that through meditation, mindfulness, breath work. There's a multitude of ways to do that. So that is always kind of what we're coming back to, just to kind of then integrate in the other aspects, I would say. Heather, jump in at any time.
Yeah, another
But
aspect I think of alignment is where it's that entry into the process that helps us be in a witness self.
Hmm.
Because if we're too identified with our stories and with our pain, then there's no space to actually be in the healing process. So part of what alignment helps with also is how do we disidentify from our story, realize that we have this soul self that's untouched by the trauma,
Right.
that can help us be in that witness place
That's
to
so
be.
hard. I think for people that are just starting on the
Mhm.
journey, it's like when and you guys very bravely share the details of your traumas. They're pretty profound. And as are many people, I'm always and never shocked these days about the level of trauma that I encounter on a daily basis in my practice. Um, and and so I feel like the first step, like what you're talking about, Heather, is we have to sort of disidentify with the fact that we are our story. These things happen to us, but they are not who we are fundamentally.
Mhm.
And that what you're what you're saying to me sounds like that alignment gives us a little bit of spaciousness to observe what's going on, to dig down there without feeling like it's who we are at some fundamental level.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Beautifully said. Because otherwise we
And
just
I
get
would,
overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
yeah, and I would say we're both, and we're our stories and we're not.
Right.
We're both. So also trained in psychosynthesis, we're right in the middle, holding the both and.
Right.
And there are sometimes, often, that we can't get to that quietness, that stillness, that presence or awareness, that we are too in the emotion, that it is too charged, that we, and I have found that that sometimes it is the emotion, like fully just surrendering to the emotion, that drops me into the stillness. So again, there's no hard fast rule on that, but in general, if we have practices where we can stay somewhat vigilant to them, whatever they are. Some people, it's just watching light reflect off of water, or going for a jog, or doing yoga. But the more we do those, the more it expands that energy within us. So it gives it more space. Then from there, it allows us more capacity to then bring in the trauma or in the woundedness and be able to hold the both and without becoming overwhelmed.
And part of what we try to talk about with these different aspects of that medicine wheel is, like Kristina was saying, we weave in and out of the different components. It's not something we have to do sequentially.
Right.
So the next part of the medicine wheel is relationship. And sometimes if we can't get into that alignment or can't be in that witness self, at times what we need is to be in a healing relationship where we can feel seen and heard and held, so that it's safe to begin to explore the wound and the healing process. So that's the next phase of the wheel. But sometimes people will enter in through that process. It's really.
And by relationship, you mean more like a relationship with a healer, with a, is that, or do you mean all of your relationships?
Well, we really talk a lot about how that may be a healer, it may be a therapist, but both Kristina and I have had crucial parts of our own healing journey be through relationships with spirit guides, or for me, animal allies or plant allies, or walking in connection with Mother Earth. So there are many ways that we can enter into that dynamic where we feel that sense of support and connection in a way that's healing for us.
It's very comforting to know we don't have to go it alone. And in fact, that we, in a way, can't. Because I think that some of these things like are so deep and so embedded in our psyche in such a way, it's sort of like trying to look at the back of your own head. You need a mirror, you need somebody to hold the mirror for you and reflect, to create safe space and reflection. It's super hard to have a baby without a midwife, right? And I think of the best healers that have been for me are like midwives or mid people. That are not always women, but that have created that like process to birth my own self in whatever way I'm doing it.
It's beautifully said, Lisa. And trauma, if we experience a traumatic event and then feel held and seen and supported, it doesn't get embedded in us in an ongoing trauma response. Right. So to heal, when we have, been traumatized in isolation and not been supported, we need that healing relationship.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Just going to add there that, a lot of abuse is happened in secrecy. So to heal, it's crucial to have a witnessing other and to have a voice and be able to be seen and heard and acknowledged.
Absolutely. Right. And the next stage you have is consciousness. Is that right? The next part of the spiral?
Yeah. Yeah. So again, just really feeling like it's a critical, part of the process is that we really know what's in the unconscious, really bring out what has been hidden and tucked away, especially through trauma, as usually there's dissociation or compartmentalization that goes on, depending on how severe it is. So it is coming to understand all the parts of us, all of our facets, reclaiming them. Really, I feel it's a type of soul retrieval, bringing back the wholeness of who we are. So it's not, yeah, so our thoughts, our core beliefs, what we formed in the abuse, really, and that's why I think our line of work, it's so, people go to typical healers or energy practitioners and just want them to, wave a wand. And it's really crucial that we have this integration of what's being healed. So that is the participation of not just the healer, but absolutely the client or the person coming in to work their process, because that's what it is. So it's moving that stuff up into consciousness to work and integrate.
And it's really that understanding that we all have multiplicity of aspects of the self within us, and that healing really comes from honoring those different parts of ourselves and bringing them into communication with each other, bringing them into connection. And when we've experienced trauma, sometimes, as Kristina was saying, some of those parts get split off or disconnected, and then they're affecting us or controlling us or blocking us because we're not aware of them, but those parts are still frozen in the trauma,
Right.
and get triggered in ways that reactivate that pain, that trauma. So to bring it into awareness allows those parts to heal and then become a part of the whole self.
It seems like the world conspires to poke us in those places until we do the work too, Anyway, so I just want to remind everyone that we are here with Kristina Lee and Heather Ensworth talking about their book, From Trauma to Freedom. And it's such a powerful and beautiful book. So let's talk a little bit about this last part, healing. That's the last part of the spiral. What is it? I always love to ask people's definition of healing, since my show is all about healing and I talk to healers all day. But what is it in your mind?
Such
a good question. Heather?
Well, yes. I mean, we could talk for hours about what is healing, but ultimately, I think from my perspective, and I think what we're trying to write about in the book, is healing is about coming back into wholeness. Healing is about coming back into the uniqueness of who you are. One of the things that I love as an astrologer versus my background as a psychologist, in psychology, there's sort of this normative sense of what it means to be healthy.
Right.
From an astrological and deeper spiritual sense, healing is about coming into the uniqueness of who you are. And I think it's also about that ability to more and more align the personality self, that experience that we have in this incarnation, with our soul self that is eternal and is constantly guiding us in our path of growing and evolving and deepening in love and wisdom.
It's beautiful. That's a great answer. I love that. Thank you. What about you, Kristina? How does
I don't
that?
know. Yeah, I don't know if there's too much more to add from that. It's a beautiful response. I would say, yeah, it is about coming into our wholeness, our authenticity, who we truly are. And as we reclaim the lost parts, we move them out of the trauma state. So we're less triggered. And that suffering, that pain is more background than foreground. And it allows us to really be in our creative uniqueness, and we're all here for a purpose. And I think that's healing, is when we're living a life of integrity, authenticity, and purpose. And and those parts that we reclaim, they hold gifts. and they hold, that they're part of the spectrum of who we are. So as we reclaim them, we reclaim more of ourselves, our gifts. And a lot of those times it's our child parts. So our lightness of being, our curiosity, our laughter, anyway, so then the joy, yes. And how kids are just, just very good at just being. And I think that's more and more we have the capacity to do that, is to not be doers on this planet, but to just be. And I think that is the definition of healing and wholeness.
That's great. I love that. It reminds me of something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, that we have like two sort of mandates, here on the planet. To heal the wound and complete the mission, and sometimes to complete our life purpose. And for many of us, especially as healers, healing the wound is a part of completing the mission. Like, we can't, if all of our energy is going towards, if you're like bleeding out on the table in the emergency room, no one's going to expect you to, hop up and perform some surgery, right? We have to that's our primary mandate. And then often as healers, we then take all of that stuff that we learned, it becomes sort of the fuel for our life purpose, or the flip side of everything that we've done, and for ourselves now becomes what we can bring to our clients. So it's always the part of being a healer that I think I like the most, which is it sort of staying on the cutting edge of my own work, and uncovering that next layer, that next piece to work through, for my own peace of mind, for my own inner peace, but also for how I can then translate that and bring that to other people.
Oh, that's beautiful, Lisa. That's beautiful.
Yeah, that is so true.
Right?
Again, it's that sense that the deeper we go on our own journeys, the more we have to share and offer other people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Now forget this quote that this might be another quote, sorry, that Heather says. This is more of her language, but it's so true that we often give or want to give what we didn't have. And I think that's a lot about this book, is what we didn't have, that we actually wanted and felt like we needed. And so it's that self-discovery, and then being able to give that back.
Well, as pioneers, we always learn things the hard way, don't we? We learn things the hard way and sort of have to bushwhack up the mountain, thrash our way through things. And then there's I have the same thing growing up as a psychic in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and having to learn it all. And myself as a psychic and sensitive, I think there's some incredible satisfaction of the soul that we get when we can help other people not have to do that. When we can help them take an easier road, which I think anyone who's had trauma, especially severe trauma, would really benefit. But let's talk about your book. Let's talk about a little bit your book launch, which is happening next week, which would be, the book is launching on April 29th, 2021. That's right. And if people buy the book on that day, then they're going to get a whole lot of cool stuff, right?
Yes. We're doing our formal book launch on April 29th, and anyone who buys the book that day on Amazon and registers it on this site, transformingtraumatofreedom.com, we're giving them free access to a healing summit that you're part of, Lisa.
Yes.
But it's giving a sense of people who are doing their own healing work in different ways around the world. And so we're offering that for free to anyone who buys the book on April 29th.
It was so fun to collaborate with you on that, and I encourage everyone to buy the book on that date, because I know you lined up like a bunch of beautiful, people to work with, to collaborate with, to have it's like a telesummit, or it's like a summit kind of, right, that you've done that brings a bunch of people talking on this subject. I think it's going to be a fantastic gift for anybody that buys your book on that day, April 29th, 2021. And where else, what else can you say? How do people find you? Was that the website, transformingtraumatofreedom.com? Is that where people should go to pick up your book?
Exactly. That's where people can buy the book and also access our healing medicine wheel kit. And then my site for my work, which is where my astrological work is risingmoonhealingcenter.com. And Kristina?
Yes, people can find me on my website, opentotruefreedom.com.
So you both work, you both have your individual practices and doing astrology. Do you do tropical or Vedic astrology, Heather?
I do more modern Western astrology, but I also integrate a form of astrology, evolutionary astrology, that's also looking at the chart from the perspective of what's our soul's journey in this lifetime and what wounds may we bring in from past lives that we're also trying to clear.
Totally calling you for a session.
She's great.
It's been a while. It's been a while since I've had a really good astrological reading. I find them very helpful. So, yeah, that's great.
She's on YouTube. Yeah.
Awesome.
Just to say,
cool.
If you want to get a good feel of Heather and her work, she's on YouTube.
That's fantastic. And the kind of work you do, Kristina, you do more like I do, like intuitive, but energy healing too, right?
Yeah, energy healing. Yeah. Then just integrating that too with, birth work and, moving into purpose.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show and bringing up about this super important topic. And I just want to share again the book, From Trauma to Freedom. So good with Kristina Lee and Heather Ensworth. If you're working through trauma yourself, or if you are a therapist or a healer of some kind and are working with trauma with your clients, this one should be on your bookshelf as one of your trauma Bibles. So thank you so much for being with us. So good luck on your launch. I know your book is amazing and it needs to get out into the world. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. It's been great to do this with you.
Yeah,
and thank all of you for watching or listening today. We're so glad to have you here. If you want to find me, you can find me on my website, lisacampion.com. Hope that you come by and visit. I have a lot of free gifts and all kinds of resources for psychics, healers, and empaths. That's sort of my gig, to train psychics and healers and empaths, because man, the world needs all of the healers that it can get. Thank you so much for being here with us on the Miracle of Healing, where we are healing the planet 1% at a time, right here on Empower Radio.